tragic endings to otherwise routine flights. Hello, my name's Stuart Matthews. I've been involved in aviation practically all my life. In fact, I even had a private pilot's license before I could drive a car. As far as my aviation experience is concerned, I've designed them, I've built them, I've bought them, I've flown them, I've sold them, I've operated them, and yes, I've even crashed them. Over the years, I've seen a lot of changes in aviation, but unfortunately, one thing hasn't changed. Planes are still crashing into the ground in spite of incredible advances in technology, safety devices, equipment, training, weather forecasting, as well as air traffic control. In any aircraft accident, loss of life is particularly devastating. The difference between the type of accidents that we will be discussing in this video and others is that these occurred in situations where the flight crew firmly believed that they had the aircraft well under control. As these types of accidents have been investigated over the years, the term controlled flight into terrain, CFIT, has evolved. In most cases, CFIT accidents occur when reality and the flight crew's assessment of their situation are grossly in error. More specifically, CFIT defines a situation when an aircraft is flown into terrain, either land or water, with no prior awareness on the part of the crew of impending disaster. Caused primarily by a lack of lateral or vertical situational awareness, many CFIT accidents could be avoided through improved planning, understanding, and training. This program is part of a comprehensive worldwide industry effort led by the Flight Safety Foundation to help eliminate the CFIT problem. In addition to this video, the Flight Safety Foundation has produced and distributed worldwide our CFIT checklist. This valuable tool helps assess the degree of CFIT threat for a given situation by weighing operational risk versus risk reduction factors such as flight crew training and aircraft equipment. What follows is the examination of the problem, including the analysis of 3 CFIT accidents. We'll conclude by looking at the types of preventative measures that can help air crews from compromising their situational awareness and causing a tragic accident.
Since 1958, more than 8,300 people have become CFIT statistics. Although there has been a general decline in the frequency of CFIT accidents over the past 20 years, CFIT is still the #1 killer of passengers and crew aboard commercial transport aircraft. Your risk of being involved in a CFIT accident is dependent on a number of factors, including such things as equipment, training, environment, and type of operation. Although the majority of CFIT fatalities occur on large commercial aircraft, the largest number of CFIT accidents involve small turboprop and jet aircraft. In the smaller aircraft category, air taxi operations have the worst CFIT accident record, accounting for over 60% of the total. Corporate aircraft are averaging about 7 CFIT accidents worldwide per year, which is slightly less than the rate for air taxi operations. In the United States alone, business turboprop aircraft are currently averaging 1 CFIT accident per month. Other than the priceless cost in human life and suffering, CFIT accidents over a recent 5-year period accounted for nearly $1 billion in losses in commercial jet transportation alone. Over the years, improved technology has helped to stem the tide, particularly in large commercial transports. Since the world's airlines began equipping with Ground Proximity Warning Systems, or GPWS, in 1974, CFIT accidents have been reduced significantly. However, for commuter, regional, air taxi, corporate, and business aircraft operators, the trend has not been as good. Around the globe, for example, we lose approximately 25 aircraft per year to CFIT accidents. Air taxi aircraft are involved in about half this number. No matter what type of aircraft you fly, your CFIT risk increases dramatically during the approach phase. And contrary to what many pilots may believe, CFIT accidents on approach don't normally occur because the pilots stray off the approach course into surrounding terrain. Rather, most pilots were right on course, but didn't manage their descent properly. Furthermore, 1/2 of all CFIT accidents occur on instrument approaches that incorporate multiple DME step-down fixes. These types of approaches increase the potential for error, even among experienced pilots. For example, in 1992, the 13,000-hour captain of an Airbus A300 descended early and flew into the side of a ridge while on this approach to Kathmandu, Nepal. Although statistical data help document the fact that we have a problem, they do little in the way of prevention. As difficult as it may be to relive the last moments prior to disaster, the process can be a valuable tool in accident prevention. With that in mind, we'll examine 3 cases that exemplify some of the most prevalent problems associated with CFIT. The first case we'll look at is a classic CFIT accident in mountainous terrain in poor weather. The facts in this accident are from the United States Official Aviation Accident Investigation Agency, the National Transportation Safety Board, or NTSB. Just after 8 a.m. on December 11, 1991, a Beechjet carrying 7 passengers and 2 crew members landed at the Richard B. Russell Airport near Rome, Georgia. The aircraft was owned and operated by a chain of supermarkets and related stores based in Birmingham, Alabama. The passengers were on an annual Christmas tour of company facilities. During the approximately 1 hour that it took for the passengers to complete their business in Rome, the pilots filed an IFR flight plan with a stopover in Huntsville en route to Birmingham. The estimated time of departure was filed as 9:15 in the morning. Around 9:25, the passengers who were reportedly pushing to maintain their schedule arrived at the airport. 8 minutes later, the Beechjet taxied for takeoff. Since requesting and waiting for an IFR departure clearance could have resulted in a delay of up to 30 minutes, the captain apparently decided to expedite matters. With a ceiling of 1,000 feet and visibility of 10 miles, the captain initiated a VFR departure with the intention of picking up an IFR clearance en route. 13 seconds after takeoff, the captain contacted Atlanta Center, informing them that he had just departed Rome VFR and was looking for a clearance to Huntsville. ATC assigned the aircraft a transponder code with instructions to maintain VFR. A traffic advisory for aircraft on approach to Rome was also issued. 2 minutes later, Atlanta Center, which due to line-of-sight limitations did not have radar contact with the aircraft, asked the crew to state their altitude. The crew informed ATC that they were at 1,300 feet VFR just southwest of Rome Airport. Over the next minute, the captain and first officer discussed their proximity to rising terrain and other aircraft on approach to Rome. 30 seconds later, and nearly 4 minutes after takeoff, the Beechjet slammed into the south side of Mount Lavender during level flight at an altitude of 1,580 feet, killing all 9 people on board. How could 2 pilots, with combined flight experience of over 19,000 hours, who knew they were flying in the vicinity of terrain rising above their flight level, still end up a CFIT statistic? A good place to start the search for answers is the CFIT checklist. If everything went perfectly, the crew was still operating without ATC radar coverage, in mountainous terrain, and out of an airport with no published IFR departure. Matters were complicated further by the captain's decision to initiate visual flight into such an environment with low ceilings. Although the pilots knew they were in an area of rapidly rising terrain, the lowest cloud layer would have obscured the tops of the nearby terrain, making it difficult for the crew to pinpoint their location. During the last minute of flight, the crew could not agree on which way to turn to avoid the terrain and weather. Instead, they faithfully continued straight ahead until it was too late. The NTSB cited the crew's failure to maintain situational awareness in the marginal VFR flight environment as the probable cause of the accident. However, other than advising against scud running, the board didn't offer a well-defined solution that could eliminate future accidents of this type. What then can be done? Initially, crews and operators should be alerted when they are operating in an environment of heightened CFIT risk. As highlighted in the CFIT checklist, this awareness can be developed through an examination of the proposed flight profile and characteristics such as ATC capabilities, aircraft equipment, terrain, and weather. Next, policies and procedures should be examined to ensure that they foster a safe, coordinated, and consistent flight operation. Additionally, training programs should be established that promote continued CFIT awareness, risk recognition, and corrective action. It's also important that any program of this sort is supported by open channels of communication to address and resolve procedural diversions, as well as crew and management conflict. While a comprehensive CFIT awareness program can quickly improve situational awareness, equipping aircraft with improved avionics represents another source of risk reduction. Although advanced technology may be a long-term solution for some operators, its value is obvious. For example, let's take a look at how an installed GPWS might have altered the outcome of the flight from Rome, Georgia. This recreation depicts the last 20 seconds before impact. Had a GPWS been installed, a warning would have sounded about 12 seconds prior to impact.
Terrain, terrain, pull up, pull up, pull up.
The NTSB determined that this warning should have provided adequate time for the pilots to take evasive action.
Pull up, pull up.
Thus, despite the compromising position in which the crew placed the aircraft and passengers, an installed GPWS acting as the last line of defense may have saved the aircraft, passengers, and crew. However, it's important to emphasize that although modern technology may have helped prevent this accident, the lack of an installed GPWS didn't cause the aircraft to fly into the side of Mount Lavender. GPWS is a defensive instrument only. That is, if you get to the point where the GPWS warning activates, you have already dug yourself a very large hole that may still be impossible to climb out of. Flight crew awareness and vigilance are the primary tools that should be used to avoid CFIT. The problems associated with poor crew coordination and disorientation that were evident in the Rome, Georgia accident also contributed to another CFIT tragedy. As reported by the Transportation Safety Board of Canada, a Beechcraft C-99 departed Timmins, Ontario on the evening of April 20th, 1990. 2 pilots and 2 passengers were on board the scheduled flight to Moosonee, Ontario. After an uneventful 38-minute flight via airways, the aircraft was cleared for the VOR runway 24 approach to Moosonee. After flying the procedure turn, the crew intercepted the 061 radial inbound and initiated a descent to the MDA of 440 feet. During the descent, the aircraft broke through the cloud layer at 900 feet MSL and approximately 9 miles from the airport. Since both pilots had the runway lights in sight, the captain decided to transition to a visual approach and proceed inbound to runway 24 at 700 feet MSL. Unfortunately, the aircraft's descent was never arrested. The aircraft impacted the ground at an elevation of 20 feet MSL, 7 miles east-northeast of the Moosonee Airport. The captain and passengers were seriously injured, and the co-pilot was killed. After a thorough investigation, the Transportation Safety Board concluded that both pilots succumbed to a dangerous distortion of reality known as the black hole illusion. When a night approach is made over unlighted terrain, as was the case on this flight, the black area in the foreground causes the bright runway lights in the distance to appear lower than they really are. This gave the pilots the impression that they were higher than they really were. In fact, The captain later stated that he believed the aircraft was at an altitude of 700 feet MSL at the time of the impact. The captain also indicated that the last altitude call he received from the co-pilot was at 800 feet MSL, 100 feet above the intended level-off altitude. With no help from the co-pilot, the captain continued to fly solely with visual reference to the runway lights. The lighting system at Moosonee was limited at best with no approach lighting and no visual approach slope indicator system. Research indicates that without cross-referencing the altimeter, the environment the pilots were operating in was one in which virtually no detectable rate of descent could be discerned through visual clues. The crew was further disadvantaged by the fact that the aircraft was not equipped with an altitude alerter, radio altimeter, or GPWS. Still, the primary defense should be situational awareness. Had the crew simply been more cognizant of their CFIT risk, they may have been more attentive to their altitude. Flight Safety Foundation's CFIT checklist can be particularly helpful in identifying any deficiencies and potential risks in your operation. Something as simple as the area of the world in which you're flying can have a dramatic effect on your chances of being involved in a CFIT accident. For example, compared with North America, the CFIT accident rate is 33 times higher in the area in which our third accident occurred. On September 4th, 1991, November 204 Charlie, a G-2 operated by a U.S. corporation departed Tokyo, Japan for Jakarta with a planned fuel stop in Kota Kinabalu, Malaysia. The crew had previous operational experience at the Kota Kinabalu Airport, which is located on the northwest coast of Borneo. The en route portion of the flight is believed to have been uneventful. As the aircraft approached Kota Kinabalu, the weather was VFR, with multiple cloud layers from 1,600 feet to 27,000 feet. Visibility at the airport was reported to be greater than 10 kilometers. The instrument approach facilities included an ILS and VOR, but no radar, which is typical of airports in the region. As the aircraft approached its clearance limit, the Kinabalu VOR, the crew repeatedly tried to obtain further clearance on the congested frequency.
Ask if we can track outbound on the 258 if he wants to stop over the VOR.
204 Charlie, yeah, you want to track outbound on the 258 degree bridge or hold over the VOR?
November 204 Charlie, report radio maintaining on.
Radio. What radio you're on?
04 Charlie, report maintaining on.
Okay, 04 Charlie, we're on the 025 radio.
And radio 025 to Victor Zulu November.
I didn't hear what he said on it.
I didn't either. Okay, 204 Charlie, we're passing over the VOR and he wants to go outbound on that 258 radio.
Only over the Victor Zulu November VOR now.
Yes. Yeah, we're over the VOR.
That's covered. We are over the VOR.
Mission 391 report, passing.
50.
So we're level 15,000.
Mission 391, Kinabalu.
391, go ahead.
Follow passing now in GME.
Level 8005, 11 DME, leading 46,000.
November 204 Charlie, descend over the Victor Zulu November VOR to 9,500.
The instructions to descend south of the airfield and maintain 9,500 feet are at best ambiguous.
Again, the standard descent is 9,500.
November 204 Charlie, that is Safari. Report passing 10,000.
I didn't,
Report out of 10,000.
Follow.
I still didn't understand. Did he say we could go outbound on the VOR or do we have to hold?
Termination 413, my brother.
Well, I gotta know.
Requesting Sandakan, follow 170, push start 10 minutes.
13 is a Conway 02, surface wind 30010.
turn on 4102. There's your 4-3, thank you.
204 Charlie, we're still uncertain. You want us to go outbound on the 258 clear video, or you want us to hold?
November 204 Charlie, descend south of the airfield to 9,500.
I understand descend south to 9,500, and we're passing 15,000 now.
Your report passing 10,000.
Although the VOR is not located on the field, its close proximity to the airport warrants including it in the clearance, especially in a non-radar environment. It's possible that the controller expected the crew to maintain VMC or for the aircraft to descend southwest over the water. If these were his expectations, he certainly did not clearly communicate them to the pilots. Since the controller and crew spoke different primary languages, the message received by the pilots may have been different than what ATC intended. It's believed the aircraft complied with the clearance and departed the Kinabalu VOR on a 180-degree track. As the aircraft progressed south, the controller continued to issue descent clearances.
November 204 Charlie, continue descent to 6,000.
Down to 6,000.
04 Charlie, low passing up.
7,000.
November 204 Charlie, expect to join final runway 02 after passing 4,000.
Okay, after 4,000, expect to turn inbound to runway 02.
November 204 Charlie, affirmative, report passing 4,000.
After obtaining limited visual contact with the ground, the crew became concerned with their proximity to the nearby terrain, which rose to 5,000 feet.
Julius, confirm.
Getting pretty close to the hill.
Yeah, I know.
What's that, Bob? Charlie, Juliet, Major 3901.
Tell them we're through 4.
204 Charlie.
40 me now.
290, I mean.
Clear to join final for runway 02, descend to 2,500.
Okay, final descent for runway 02, 2,500.
As the crew turned to intercept the final approach course, they initiated a climbing turn.
I'm going to turn to the right. God, I tell you, I don't like what we've got here. I'm climbing this sucker out of here.
Unfortunately, the climb wasn't steep enough to clear the terrain, and the aircraft crashed only 100 feet below the top of a ridge located 32 miles south of the VOR. Among other things, accidents such as this exemplify the need to act as soon as possible on your intuition with a maximum performance climb should you become uncertain or have an uneasy feeling about the aircraft's position relative to the terrain. It could mean the difference between life and death. Although an escape maneuver is an effective means to avoid an accident and should be practiced regularly, it certainly would be preferable never to be in a situation where you actually have to use it. Let's take a look at a few things that may have helped this crew avoid the predicament in which they found themselves. One item that is always available is a thorough captain's briefing on the type approach to be flown. This discussion should include terrain information, which is available on the approach plate. Supplementing approach chart data with information from other sources can help enhance the mental picture of surrounding terrain. Several arrival routes from the southeast contained step-down restrictions for terrain clearance. In addition to SIDS and STARS, pilots can review ONCs, WACs, sectionals, and airport qualification charts. The circumstances that this crew ran into are not unusual when pilots and controllers speak different primary languages. Any instance where the clearance doesn't fit the situation may be grounds for inquiry. Furthermore, since technology varies worldwide, you may encounter a wide range of ATC capabilities. Understanding the limitations of approach control radar and language differences in your area of operations is critical to flight safety. Another important factor to consider is approach design. Characteristics such as shallow approach angles have been cited as contributing factors in about 10% of CFIT accidents. For example, 2 aircraft recently crashed while on this approach into Kano, Nigeria, which has an approach angle of only 1.6 degrees. Flight crews should be especially alert on approaches with descent gradients less than 2 3/4 degrees. Flight departments can use the CFIT checklist to help design policies, procedures, and training that directly addresses the CFIT threat. First, specific operational procedures should be established. Among the most important is to review the significant terrain along the route using a variety of charts. During the terminal phase, approach charts with color terrain contours and airport qualification charts can be of tremendous value. Also, it's a good policy to promote the use of ATC radar when available and emphasize the importance on the part of flight crews of knowing when they are not in radar contact. Of course, making full use of the pilot not flying for backup is essential, especially in the approach phase. Night and IMC approaches should be flown by the first officer if it doesn't conflict with established procedures. By monitoring the approach, the captain's experience can be used to quickly spot minor deviations before they become major problems. Where training is concerned, it's important to fight pilot complacency by highlighting the CFIT threat. This can be accomplished through analysis of recent and past CFIT accidents, as well as encouraging open discussion and establishing a non-punitive method of incident reporting and review. Additionally, to help reduce fatal hesitations, consider requesting your training provider to include terrain recovery practice annually in a simulator equipped with GPWS. However, to make it worthwhile, it's imperative to fly the way you train. Modern technology and equipment helps make the fight against CFIT easier. The benefits of GPWS are clear. But what can flight departments do if they don't have a GPWS installed? Well, think back to the fact that the primary cause of CFIT is a lack of situational awareness, and you may find some answers. For example, take full advantage of the equipment you do have, such as the radio altimeter. Also, use additional nav aids like GPS as a backup and to improve situational awareness. And as with any equipment, it's important that crews are educated on its benefits and limitations.
While aircraft capabilities vary widely, the common thread in all CFIT accidents is the crew. The simple fact is that despite the millions of dollars spent each year on warning systems and safety devices, aircraft are still being flown into land or water without any forewarning on the part of the crew. CFIT won't just go away. Use the preventative techniques we've described as well as the Foundation's checklist to help maintain your awareness. Help is also available in the form of a CFIT training aid produced by Boeing in consultation with the Flight Safety Foundation. This training aid package contains a wealth of information and practical advice as well as guidance on how to incorporate CFIT training in your operation. Whatever your specific training methods are, remember that they need to focus on awareness and prevention. Start by recognizing the risk and your vulnerability. Then maintain your vigilance and keep up your training and proficiency. In the end, you, the crew, are the only ones who can ensure the safe completion of every flight. Helping to eliminate controlled flight into terrain is just one part of the Flight Safety Foundation's overall effort to improve aviation safety. The Flight Safety Foundation is an independent membership organization that is funded by the aviation industry and supported by its leaders worldwide.